I want to talk to you today about what the Bible says about depression. And if you consult almost any book, do a Google search on Bible and depression, you're going to come up with a passage that we'll deal with today. This is 1 Kings 19, the story of Elijah in his bout with depression. So let's dive into our text. Beginning in verse 1, Now Ahab told Jezebel everything Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. That's last week's passage, the great contest on Mount Carmel. So Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah to say, May the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I did not make your life like one of them. In other words, she's saying, I am going to kill you. Elijah was afraid, and he ran for his life. He came to Beersheba in Judah, and he left his servant there, while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush, sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. Got a picture here of a guy under a broom bush. You can see it's pretty dry, and that little bush wouldn't provide much shade, much relief from the hot sun. Elijah says, I have had enough, Lord. He said, take my life. I am no better than my ancestors. So we see here that he's deeply depressed, and how does God deal with his depression? Verse 5, Then he lay down under the bush and fell asleep. All at once an angel touched him and said, Get up and eat. What do we learn? What do you learn from dealing with depression from that verse right there? He fell asleep. He looked around, and there by his head were some bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and he drank, and then he lay down again. What do we learn about dealing with depression from that verse right there? Verse 7, the angel of the Lord came back a second time, touched him and said, Get up and drink, for your journey is too much for you. So he got up and ate and drank. Strengthened by the food, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights, about 200 miles from what we can tell, until he reached the Horeb, the mountain of God, also known as Mount Sinai. And you can see he started up north here. There's Mount Carmel, and worked his way down and down and down. And you see it's a pretty long trip, about 200 miles if you can think about walking that far. Here's a picture of what it might have looked like. We're not for sure exactly where this mountain was, but here's one picture of what it may have looked like. There he went into a cave and he spent the night, and the word of the Lord came to him. What are you doing here, Elijah? What are you doing here? He actually asked him this question twice. We have a picture of a possible cave, Elijah. We don't know, again, if this is the cave for sure. This is looking out of the cave, the kind of view that Elijah would have had, and a close-up of the cave. You can imagine Elijah sitting there, but the point of showing you these pictures is just to point out again that these stories are rooted in history. Let's see 3 observations and then 7 applications of what we can find from this story. Observation number 1, everyone gets depressed. Everyone gets depressed. Elijah got depressed, and you're going to get depressed, and I get depressed sometimes, and for some people it's a very severe thing, and some people not so much, but all of us get depressed. Robert Morgan says, fits of depression come over most of us. Charles Spurgeon once told his students, the strong are not always vigorous, the joyous are not always happy. Spurgeon himself was living proof, for he often suffered agonizing periods of depression. Martin Luther was depressed. In fact, he was so depressed one time that his wife came in with a black dress on, like she was dressed to go to a funeral. And he said to her, where are you going, honey? It looks like you're going to a funeral. I didn't realize that somebody died. And she said, Martin, the way you're behaving lately, I thought that God had died. So I came prepared to attend his funeral. This quoted by Billy Graham, but the point is everyone gets depressed. Second observation, great lows often come after great highs. Great lows come after great highs, as they did in this case. He had this great high at Mount Carmel, and immediately after he had this great low. Life has highs and lows, as in a mountain range. The lows often come right after the highs. I thought about this as I climbed the highest peak in Texas the other day, and it was an exhilarating hike, but you know what happens after you get to the top of that peak? Well, you got to go back down, and that's how life is. You get up and you get down, and sometimes the downs come right after the big lows. Observation number 3, depression could have a chemical component that could be helped by medicine. And I'm obviously a theologian and a preacher and a Bible teacher. I am not a clinical psychologist, and I would say to you, you may need the help of a clinical psychologist in the medicine that they provide. But I would say 2 things about this as a theologian and a Bible teacher, and that is we've nearly all known people who were greatly helped by medicine, and if that is you, take your medicine and don't have any hesitation or shame about it. You don't have any hesitation or shame if you need medicine for anything else. And if you need medicine to help you with your depression, according to your psychologist, I would encourage you to take your meds. We've all known people who did pretty well when they're on their meds and then get off their meds.